Beanie fans, and welcome to today's episode of the Shite and Sarcasm Engineering Show. Today I have for you these ICAN wheels. Now quite a few people asked if I could do a review on the ICAN wheels. They are extremely popular, and that's not just in Europe, all over the world. I've seen loads of people on them, and they're popular probably because they are extremely cheap. You can get these for like $600–700, something like that, depending on where you get luck and if you've got the appropriate discount codes and all that kind of stuff. I'll talk you through these wheels and what's good and what's not so good about them. These are 40mm deep wheels, so in the grand scheme of things they are fairly shallow, and you can, if I start from the rim and work my way inwards, you can kind of see where I actually had an accident on these wheels. The tyre deflated, I had no pressure in it, and then I came off, and this road rash around the side of it ended up damaging the corners of the wheels, but they still work okay. Here we've got the drainage hole, which is by the valve hole. I haven't had any issues with water build-up inside the wheels, so there's no real problems there. Then if I move this round, we've got steel spokes, flat bladed. There's about probably 7 or 8mm of nipple showing there, and then we've got the steel spokes. At the centre is a Novatec hub. I'll talk about that later. Front hub and wheel assembly is 578 grams. Rear hub and wheel assembly is 750 grams. The front and rear wheels are using the same rim, and it is about 26–27mm on the outside, and then on the inside we've got 19. This is the front hub. To take it apart, pull the cap off, and then that exposes the bearing behind it. This is an extremely slender 699 bearing, so it's a 9mm shaft through the middle, and then it's the second or maybe third in the Dimension series. Rear hub, I've been using one of my extended cassette lock nuts on here, and it mainly protects the cassette from bite marks, so that's worked quite well. So it's obviously a lot more chunky than the standard Shimano one. This one's also steel. I do make them in steel and aluminium as well. To get this apart, you need to put an Allen key in the back, an Allen key in the front, and then turn it. Now it does require quite a lot of preload, but I've slackened it off just to show you. If you are going to service this, just remember that sequence. So that washer or spacer goes in there, and that's your sealing side. To get this off, you need to put a 10mm Allen key in the back to lock it, and then give it a turn. And that will remove the cap. Once that's off, you can just pull this off, and you've got split poles, of which there are 4. And then the corresponding mating mechanism is in there. Should bear in mind this is at quite a small radius, so the ultimate torque load is reduced, but in reality I'd be very surprised if anyone put up enough power to strip it. Slight oddity of this hub assembly is how deep that bearing sits. So normally they try and bring it out so it's kind of like in line as close as you can to the spokes. In the case of this, it's kind of like here. So it's behind the line of the spokes, so the wheel is not quite as stiff. This is a part that's probably irrelevant for most people because it's a 10-speed spacer, so you'd put that in if you were going to use a 10-speed cassette. Most people would be on 11 or 12. But this kind of highlights where, if you're going to do a cost saving, these things matter. So this is the spacer. A lot of them, they're kind of machined. This has been stamped, and the edges around here are very, very sharp. They're razor sharp. You can see the stamp marks there. There's like telltale giveaway which kind of folds the ends over. The only real area where I had to do some fettling was around the joint. So these wheels are made in segments. You can see a segment joint here, and then around here I had to sand a bit of the corner away, because when I put the tyre on, you could just see a little bit of a protrusion, and it wasn't quite right. So I sanded that off and sanded that off. Wasn't like the biggest showstopper in the world, but I'm just pointing it out. This is a close-up of the Novatech hub, and it has the absolute bare minimum machining on it. So machining at the back to give you the axial position, and that is accurate, so that's good. It's got the anti-bite guard, which is like a hardened material that's been put in. That looks like it's been glued. It doesn't look like it's fastened down. I can see a bit of the glue here. Bear in mind this has been through the ringer, and also you've got the teeth marks in here which aren't protected. The clearance on here is a bit bigger than normal compared to some of the other hubs, so if there's any cost saving, really, it's in this hub. Right, it is that time of the show again. It is time to see if the pen is working. Fresh from taking a load of finasteride to make sure my hair remains perfect in my old age of 5. The review of the ICAN budget wheels. Now, by Hambini, aged 5. Remember to check me out on Patreon and also on Crapstagram, where I am Hambini Eng, and also the website. Right, ICAN. These wheels are extremely popular. I have seen them in all sorts of places, in Germany, in France, Holland, the UK, everywhere. And I think the main reason is because they're cheap. Now, the market for wheels that are cheap is actually quite big. It's just not so visible because every Tom, Dick and Harry on the cycling magazines or whatever is usually trying to shift a load of Zip or Envy or something crazy expensive. But at this end of the market, it's essentially all the Chinese brands that have got it wrapped up. And the market for entry-level wheels, people riding on weekends and that's about it, is quite large, but you may not know about it. This is the ICAN website. You can get all sorts of stuff from here. In here, there's a section, and it's got the warehouses they have around the world, and depending on where you live, you can get the wheels with DT hubs, different rims, and also local shipping. So in my case, you can get one shipped from an EU warehouse and it arrives at your door. All the taxes, all the customs are already done, and you don't have any of those delays. It just comes. These are the wheels themselves, and you can get the description of what it is. I'd say it is fairly accurate and fairly comprehensive. There's nothing on there that they're claiming that it's bullshit. Basically, it's fairly run of the mill. And then it talks about their hubs, spokes. They're all Sapim, and all the certification they have. Don't know if it's real or not, but they put it on their website. An overview of what is there in front of us. We've got 40mm deep rims, externals 25mm, 1360 grams approximate. I always put the approximate sign in there because you don't know if the rim tape is on there or not when they measure it in the factory, blah blah blah. Tubeless compatible, 18mm internal width. I think they quote 18.35, but there you go. Sapling spokes, and you get all the skewers, spares, rim tapes, all of it. Pretty standard. Wheel build quality. Now, there isn't really that much you can check in terms of build quality other than the spoke tension and to check if they're all flat and the run out, and all of that was okay. The only comment I would make is in some areas where the mould comes round, where the joints come together, it was a bit raised, so I had to get some glass paper, sandpaper, and file it away. I mean, I was probably being pedantic. You can probably just put the tyre on it, it'd be fine, but I just file it anyway. So I'm being picky more than anything else. The internals, there's not really much to say about this other than they're very, very clean. I mean, this here, these line there and there are the tube track, and these holes are so you can get to the nipples from behind. It's just very clean. This is another shot of the wheel rim. very, very clean. These lines here are excess resin that seeps out. That's not tenting. Compared to some of the other wheels that you could get a set of $2,300-ish Ascent wheels, Polaris wheels. You know, they're on YouTube all the time. These are garbage, absolute shite. So they had a product recall because their spokes failed, but internally these rims, I don't know who makes them, they're massively wide as well. They're like 32 millimeters. There's loads of tenting. They cost, and this is what, 3 times the amount, 3 and a bit times the cost. Just rubbish. And then we've got another one. This is a bit more of a clear shot. So a UK integrator called Just Riding Along. They're based in York, in England, just on Amy Johnson Way, I think it is, around the back of the shopping centre, next to the Sulzer building. I know it well. It's a good dogging site. This is like textbook tenting. So the layer is tented up, so you've got no strength behind it. Now the way to deal with that is either over-engineer your wheel rim or just live with the prospect that it might crack. But again, it's $900 for this one, but it's quite a poor quality wheel. Bearings on the hubs. I mean, the only comment really is around the rear hub, which the fit is a bit looser. Now, I've said it's okay. It's transition, but a tight transition. But it's like a K5, and given the rest of it, it just looks completely out. It looks like it shouldn't be there. So I think it was a fluke. I might be doing them injustice there, but my opinion is, my machining opinion is, it was a bit of a fluke because it is absolutely perfect. And as a result, the rear bearing vibration is extremely low. There's nothing to write home about there. This is just noise. It's just noise, white noise. Even after 1,000 Ks on what I would class as fairly mediocre bearings, it's nothing there. Imbalance, again, there's nothing really standing out to say it's great or it's not. The ICAN wheel's the orange line, and it's what, 400 and a bit. Limit value 600, so you can see a Fast Sports one, which historically has been good, 300, and the wind space is at 500. And these are just single shots, so these are the wheels that I've had. You may have different values, and to be honest, the limit value is 600, so that even the Fast Sports and the wind space are way under that. The instability, the aerodynamic instability of these wheels is a bit strange, and it handles more like a 50 rather than a 40 wheel. So you can see the pale blue line, which is the ICAN wheel, is quite close to the yellow line, which is a 50. So it's kind of punching above its weight in some areas, but below its weight in others. So in terms of out and out speed, it's quite a fast wheel, but it's not that stable, if that makes sense. For a 40mm wheel, you'd expect it to be more stable. Limit stability is 1, so as soon as you go above that, technically you'd be unstable. Right, aerodynamic summary, 188 watts at 30 k's per hour. It is above average for a wheel of this depth and width, so that's good. And that's the formula if you want to calculate it. I think this is the next slide, which is the good and the bad bits. I mean, the first thing is what's good, the price. You are going to be paying like 700 bucks and it will end up at your door in a couple of days, 3 days, something like that. The rims are quite lightweight, and aero performance is, I'd say, good for the price. And this one's a key one, and it shouldn't be taken with a pinch of salt. They have loads of these wheels all over the place, and they've got lots of customers that post on forums and all that kind of stuff, and generally they're happy, and that shouldn't be, you know, taken with a pinch of salt. So certainly positive for them. Again, you've got a combination of parts. So the rim is a bit of an unknown, I don't know who makes that, but the Sapim spokes, the Novatec hubs, okay, the Novatec hubs might be a bit of a budget option, but they do work. You've also got, you know, I mentioned this before, but if you get a problem, you're only having to wait for, okay, you'll have to email someone in China, but they'll be able to ship you parts out from your local warehouse. So if you've got one in Australia or the UK or in the EU, you're only going to be waiting a few days for it to turn up. Having said that, I did order some parts from China and they were here in like 3 days, so there you go. Bearing degradation is low and the ride is extremely smooth, and that's because you're on steel spokes, not carbon spokes, and basically the hub is not as stiff as some of the others, so the ride is very good. Right, bad points. Because the ride is so very good, because you've got lots of damping and, you know, flex and all that kind of stuff, if you put a load of sideways load in, you can feel the wheel flex. And that's the kind of compromise you make between a good ride and wheel stiffness. Budget hub, I've mentioned this before, it's really the only weakness. You could request an upgrade, and some of the wheels that they have actually have DT hubs. I don't particularly rate DT hubs, but plenty of people do. So yeah, something to consider. And the rear, I'm only pointing this out, the hub itself, the rear has a very, very small offset on the drive side bearing. It's very, very small, it's inset slightly. If you are heavy or going over bumpy roads, I would probably, you know, seriously suggest either changing that to a slightly better bearing or changing the hub completely, because it's at a limit load, I think. But at the same time, you know, the proven customers and lots of design might kind of completely pee on my theory. So, you know, take that into account. It's not a de facto standard. And that brings us to the end of this show. If you did enjoy it, remember to smash that like button. And if you didn't, go screw yourself. And as always, keep banging your hairdresser.